Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass, our second masterclass as part of the emPOWer program. The emPOWer program was set up by OPUS, Outdoor Arts and Events, as a training program to run alongside their live sites program, their neighbourhood festivals, which I hope you all got to enjoy during the Commonwealth Games. Myself and my colleague Lara Ratnaraja, who's also here today, have created this program, and this is the second, as I say, of our masterclasses. Delighted to see that people from OPUS and from emPOWer all here today, along with everyone else who responded to our public masterclass invitation. My name's Helga Henry. For those of you who know me, I'm a freelance arts consultant, and I really have, particularly with Lara, worked on several iterations of developing diverse cultural leadership talent, producing talent, and in the case of Bridge and emPOWer, particularly around outdoor arts. So with that in mind, I'm really delighted to be joined today by our second inspiring speaker, Jane Hytch, who is the founder and CEO of emAGineer. Hi, Jane. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
emAGineer is just an extraordinary company. It makes outdoor and site-specific work, and it's really at the intersection of art and engineering. It's really future-focused, being about environmental and social change, and doing it all from a base in Coventry that really seeks to include everybody. So, hello and welcome, Jane. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Before we get started, those of you who are familiar with our masterclass format will know that we're joined by our fabulous technician and producer, Gareth, our program producer, Shirley, who's keeping us all on track and making everything look and sound great and be tight. And captioning today is carried out by Wendy. For those of you who want to know about captions, they will, if I've got this right, if I'm full screen now, it's around there. You'll see a CC button. You can press on that button and get a full transcript, and you can get that either as rolling subtitles, or you can click again to see the full transcript as it carries on. Another button that you might see is the Q&A button. There'll be an opportunity to put your questions to Jane later. So put them in the chat, in the Q&A chat, and Lara and Shirley will take care of those for me and put them through later on as soon as we can. I think that's it for housekeeping. We've made a good start. It's great to see all of you. So Jane, I think we're going to dot around and we're going to hear about the history, the story of your career, and it's really a story worth sharing. But let's start, I think, with the vision of emAGineer, and a little bit about where it comes from, and really what your intentions were, or what you wanted to bring out when you started with emAGineer.
Okay.
So I think we might be able to see that on the screen. Am I right? I'm going to get that up in a moment, I think. The magic of technology. Yeah,
Okay.
so we might kick off with this and then kind of go way back. But yeah, just to start with the vision.
Well, the name, I think, came out of the belief in the power of the imagination. Whoever you are, if you've got a great imagination, you can solve the problems of the world.
Yeah.
I suppose that's quite a bold statement, but it's kind of what I believe. And yeah, the vision is very much about collaboration across sectors, because I think if you collaborate, you can innovate. And I think the work is always about people. It's about people being part of it. And yeah, so I think that that's encapsulated in what I've written. I mean, the educational side, again, is about creativity and imagination existing as perhaps competencies within education. So it's kind of, and it's a lifetime of arriving at that, I think. And I just have to say that in my career, I haven't done this alone. I've worked with some extraordinary people, and I probably won't mention them all in the course of today, but I think they know who they are. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And it's quite interesting now, you know, you look at the word intersectional, that's become quite a trendy way of looking at things that are more than, if you like, more than one thing. But that intersection is built into your vision, isn't it? It's,
yeah, that's
you're not going to, you're not
the creative space. Yeah,
you're not going to achieve that vision on your own. It's absolutely got collaboration built in.
yeah.
And I notice also you talking about things that last in the memory forever. And again, I think you'll see as we go along, there'll be lots of memorable moments that maybe people in the audience have experienced or know about, but also once you see them, will really leave a lasting impression. And we just got a little a little sneaky peek of that. But let's start with a pretty lasting impression for you about where you started. And before Imagineer, you spent many years creating Worcester Arts Centre, and a truly formative experience. So what was maybe the toughest, what were some of the lessons that helped form Imagineer, both here and in your subsequent work experience?
Well, we'd come out of university, a group of us, and of course you always think you're great then, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you leave and you haven't got anything, because it's the university I went to wasn't particularly vocational, and so, you know, we were at kind of almost the start of everything once we'd left and got our degrees, and came across this old building. We'd learned about the work of Angelica, who's an incredible playwright, but also created community plays, so involved people. And I think we were always kind of astounded by her work and the way that by engaging in her massive plays, which involved hundreds of people, it actually transformed people's lives. And there was a documentary around about that time which was about her work, and we just thought, let's go and do an Angelica and let's make a Worcester Arts workshop.
And was she English, or was she from overseas?
No, she's English. Yeah, she lives lives in Devon. Yeah,
right.
And
so here you are doing an Angelica.
We're doing that, and when we moved into the building, we discovered it had got these barrel vaulted cellars, and so we started dreaming that one day they could be a theatre. And for a few years, we started just doing stuff. We did some outrageous things. We did some of Alfred Jarry's plays in the cellar, and it was dirty and grim, but people came because they wanted something alternative. They wanted something different. We started working out in communities around Worcester. I started doing processions, bringing people into the centre and so on. Anyway,
and that's you at the end of the next gentleman with the taller gentleman with the beard. I was going to say the gentleman with the beard, but you know, they really have come back. This could be very contemporary. That's fantastic.
Indeed. And anyway, we sort of squatted in that building, but gradually developed a good relationship with the landlords, who were the county council, and in the end persuaded them and many charities to put some money into redeveloping Worcester Arts Workshop. And we raised £350,000, which of course was a lot of money in those days.
I was going to say, that's incredible.
Yeah, we did it, and this is the architect here, Martin Baines, and we made a theatre. We started excavating the building, and then it was an April the 1st phone call that I got. We'd all been asked to leave the building because the builders had moved in and they were excavating. And they just said the Worcester Arts Workshop's collapsed. It's fallen into itself. The builders, who were bridge builders, had made a huge error, structural error, and the whole of the building collapsed into what was going to be our beautiful theatre. And I remember standing there with my dad and just saying, this is it, this is the end. This is the end of, you know, what we were dreaming about doing. And was there for a moment, did you think it was an April Fool's because of the date? No, I kept saying to people on the phone, I know this is an April Fool, you know, I'm not, and they said, you've just got to come and see this. So of course I did, and this is what I saw, and it we just cried, you know.
No, heartbreaking.
And all the people that, you know, were part of it, who were coming to workshops, who were getting involved in projects, you know, they were all there, and it was just awful. It was.
Yeah.
But, you know, you quickly kind of gather yourself up, don't you? And we spent 2 years fighting the builders insurance company, because I think they thought we were just a load of people who didn't really know what was going on, and they could kind of win us over and not give us any money or help. The county council helped us by shoring the building up, and we just thought, this is not going anywhere. So I just got hold of a barrister in London. Don't know why, but I just got there. And he listened to our story, and he agreed to help us for nothing. And in the end, the builders insurance company gave us the money, and we rebuilt Worcester Arts Workshop, and we made it. And it became a sort of working arts centre for about 40 years.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, an amazing story.
I think that is extraordinary, because there might have been, you know, that's not for the faint-hearted, is it? You know, it's fallen down. The odds are against you. You're, as you say, you're a group of sort of relatively relatively young idealistic people against, you know, a big insurance company. Massive.
And added to that, we had to relocate into an old quilt factory. So everything we were doing was within feathers. There were feathers everywhere in this building. And we just wanted to get out and move back. And of course we did. So,
that's amazing. That's incredible. And is this the reopening then of the new?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking very, well, it's very hard. That was a hard fought thing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
You did some years with that, but then you moved on and you worked at a place that was not founded by you. You know, where you were more of an employee, but you spent some time at at Coventry Belgrade, and
a long time, Helga.
Yeah. Tell us why that was, how that was so important. Like, you know, I'm well aware of the range of work you did there, but perhaps if you can explain to our guest this evening just what that meant, really.
I originally went there to be head of the community department, and of course, you know, I spent 10 years developing Worcester Arts Workshop, so I was kind of well placed. Did in the end married Richard Hayhow, who worked with Angelico, brought all that experience to the Belgrade, and was able to do community plays, you know, to change the way that the Belgrade's programming happened, and to involve hundreds of local people in telling stories about Coventry. So I kind of started doing that, but I think early on I really quickly realized that I wasn't sure that I was in the right place, and so I wasn't sure that I was, or our work was connecting with the kinds of people that I wanted to connect with. You know, that is people who don't normally go to theatres and stuff. And I was lucky enough to work with 2 artistic directors who just let me work outside. And of course, you know, the Belgrade had a history of doing the mystery plays, and very quickly I was asked to produce those because of my expertise in engaging people. I learned an awful lot about working with professional directors and artists and bringing communities and professional people together. But one of the biggest things that we did, and it was through Claire Maddox, who was a colleague for many years, have worked together. She found a video of a company called Teatro Biuro Podróż, who are a Polish company, who are the most extraordinary outdoor company. And we said, look, let's ring them up and ask them if they'll co-produce the mysteries as a piece of street art, you know, outdoor street arts, which of course was really different from the tradition of the Belgrade, the way that they used to produce the mysteries before. And it had a huge, you know, mystery plays have been produced for years. So here we were going to do something different. So we brought artists who worked on stilts, who created amazing costumes. We also worked with them to engage local people in it as well, which was a learning thing for Teatro Biuro Podróż. But to work with them, you know, I was so lucky. I learned so much about outdoor art, which of course I was going to go into, and I didn't know that at the time, but I learned so much. And we were also able to develop a festival called Arts Alive in Coventry, which ran for about 10 years, and there we managed to bring in some of the world's greatest outdoor companies and produce their work, and sometimes co-produce them. And I really did have a wonderful time there, but I still felt that I was within the confines of a working repertory theatre, which at that point we were still rehearsing plays within 3 weeks and then putting them on, and then when that was on, the next play goes on, and you just felt you didn't have enough time to R&D to really develop what you were doing, and I think in the end I started to get frustrated. I think I worked with Debbie Isett. We did a very controversial production of The 101 Dalmatians, and we did it with film on stage. We had ice and rain and wind. We built a big bridge across the auditorium, and and I knew then that I was really bursting to get out of the four walls and really start to move into outdoor arts really kind of seriously.
And I think it's also just worth mentioning at this point that at that time it wasn't called outdoor arts, was it? It wasn't like now we have an outdoor arts we have an outdoor arts sector. It's named as a practice, but really that kind of got named 15 years, between 10 and 15 years ago, I'd say, with a particular arts council report called Changing Landscapes, incidentally written by Shanine Bethana, who then went on to be the artistic director of City of Culture. But there was a body of pioneering people working out. Then it might have been known as site specific or site responsive work. But I think there's two things to pick up. So you were really a pioneer of that sort of work.
Yeah.
And I think another thing I see in the subsequent history of your work is that international collaboration and that very European, I use the in the wider sense, that very European tradition of community involvement and spectacle that happens in the streets. That's not to say there isn't a fantastic English tradition, there is as well, but I think your company is very influenced by that.
No, absolutely. I mean, we at that time, Helga, were so lucky that we could just engage with, companies like Titanic, Teatro Toscabili, Odin, Eugenio Barber, who's one of the leading, if you read books about theatre, and he came to the Belgrade and performed, it's just, you have to pinch yourself sometimes to think about, kind of what we did. But I think that gave us the confidence to always go out and try and get the best people you can to do, to work with, to never be afraid of that, to always ask the question, will you come, will you work with us, will you collaborate? So it was, and somebody said to me the other day, I think it was Bill G, he said, he's a very established producer now, and he said, I used to come and see the Mysteries, and you were really kind of leading all of that outdoor work, and I didn't realize that, we were just trying to connect with people, involve people, and connect people who wouldn't go to theatre or engage in the arts,
And that threshold issue is still alive today, isn't it? People, and I know the Belgrade's a really interesting and important example of that. That actually, by making the place as welcoming as possible, as making the work as relevant as possible, but that notwithstanding, people will still say, yeah, but I don't know if I want to go. There's just something, try as people might, I think there's still that threshold issue. So that by doing the work in their environment, in that other, in a non-institution environment, is so powerful. And we'll definitely see that as we go on.
It's also kind of come full circle in a way, because I was talking to Corey Campbell, who's the new artistic director, a few weeks ago, and he said, come on, let's do something really naughty together. I don't think he's got the wrong idea, but that to create something, and I'd love to do that. I'd love to kind of return and because I think he's so open-minded, I think we could do something very exciting.
Yeah, no, totally. There's so much to get on. I'm just going to move us on, because it's a bit of a time skip, but some of those things that we've talked about, large scale, outdoor, bursting at the seams, certainly that's also picked up in your work with Godiva. and maybe we can have a little moment on why that's so important.
I think, yeah, I think Godiva was a real turning point. And, you know, with Claire Maddox, Kath Leahy, Andrea Simpson, we formed Imagineer. One of the very first things that happened was that we won the Artist Taking the Lead award. We were beside ourselves for a project called Godiva Awakes. We'd been to Trinidad, and we'd recently travelled across Europe looking at carnival, because the early work of Imagineer was a lot to do with street carnival development. And we just realised that, you know, each town and village across Europe and in other countries had traditions of bringing their saints, their important people out at different times of the year. And we just thought, hell, you know, we've got Godiva. She's, you know, I mean, what an amazing woman or symbol of a city you could have, you know, to represent equality, social justice, peace and reconciliation. And let's make a giant, you know, we saw giant carnival structures in Viareggio made out of paper, you know, and also at that time Artichoke had done the Sultan's Elephant in London, you know, where they took that huge mechanical elephant through the streets of London. And we just thought, gosh, let's go for the Artist Taking the Lead, and let's create this giant Godiva, you know. And and so we did. And the picture of her with the huge legs is our rather sort of Monty Python-esque vision of what we thought Godiva could look like, that she would be golden, and that she would be able to walk anywhere, travel anywhere, being an ambassador for the city. But when we made that we went to the panel to get this award, and somebody said to us, do you know how you're going to make that? And we said, oh yeah, of course. But none of us had the slightest idea about how you would make something like that. You know, there wasn't a lot of reference, but we had this wonderful guy who was the chief executive of MP Aerospace, Roger Medwell, who worked with us tirelessly over 3 years to create this. He had many sleepless nights to create Godiva, the cyclopedia, and all the other things that kind of went with her. The massive journey to London that we did over 9 days, carrying a book of intent to Westminster, created by young people from across the region. You know, it's just huge thing. And I think that I wanted this photograph to be in because it kind of sums it up. You know, we travelled along the A5 to London. It took all these days. We visited towns along the way. There were celebrations. We caused massive queues. We were chased by police cars sometimes. But nobody ever really, you know, the cars that were following us, they were just shouting, encouraging us. You know, there was never any kind of, oh, get off the road, you're a monster kind of thing. It just, you're in the way. It just kind of went viral, you know, and we got her to London, and we walked her in London, and then we led the London Centre of London procession for the closure of the Paralympic Games with her, which was an amazing thing to do. But it changed everything for us, because we worked with engineers, architects, Zandra Rhodes, people who, you know, it wasn't carnival anymore. We were working with engineers and working with engineering and technology at Coventry University. You know, we worked with people in the automobile department who showed us how, you know, such a big structure could lower down and get under bridges that were 4.2 meters high, you know, which we had many of those as we went on the journey. So it was a huge collaboration to achieve her. And we made her for 1,000 years. She's still in the city and she's still doing stuff. So
just to mention the cyclopedia at the back, for those of you who aren't familiar with the project. So that was how it was powered. It's cycle power of, is it 20? How many bikes are it?
36.
36 bikes. But I also know that some of the people who took that journey were visually impaired. So we had some blind cyclists of different abilities. Even the cohort of cyclists were recruited and trained in an inclusive way, weren't they, Jane? So like it was throughout. So it isn't just oh well, you know, we've got a book we've got a book made by some young people, that, you know, tick, that's done. I think another real feature of your work is that access and inclusion permeates every possible angle. So it's not just like, oh, well, yeah, we've got a bit of young people over there, or we've got a bit of the unemployed over there. It's all in together. And I think that's really important to say.
It is. But I think, Helga, there's always, you know, challenges. We're still a project funded company. You know, the aspiration is to, you know, is to be so thorough in access and inclusivity. And sometimes you don't make it, you don't, you know, because in the end, you've got a budget to run, you know, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. And I just wanted to share that, because I think other people must have a sense.
100%. And it's a bottom that, you know, like there's always something more that can be done. But I think what really makes your organization stand out, it's about mindset, which costs nothing.
Indeed.
So doing as much as you can do within of course, everyone's got a budget. I think that's really understandable, but it's just about having that mindset to maximize opportunity at every turn by building it into the design. I think that for me is what marks it out. Fantastic image. We might see Godiva again later on the road in a different way, but that was, as you say, a real highlight. Let's move on briefly to another one that might be might be closer in people's memories. That only seems like yesterday, but in fact that was 10 years ago that Godiva was involved in the Cultural Olympiad. Bridge. Let's have a little look at Bridge.
Well, Bridge came out of the Festival of Imagineers, which we ran for a few years in Coventry, and that was really about collaborations with architects, artists, engineers, and building installations in different sites in and around the city. And in the left-hand corner, there's a paper bridge built out of thousands of pieces of rolled up paper, and that was designed by a company called Lara, who helped to build Coventry Cathedral, and it was placed in the cathedral. And kind of when we did that, it was one of many installations that was happening across the city. When we did that, the dean of the cathedral said, "Oh, you know, wouldn't it be great to build a giant bridge?" And of course, we've got that in the backs of our minds, and I think we thought about building a bridge that went from inside the cathedral ruins to the outside. It was all about building bridges between faiths and crossing divides. And we went on again, it was a 2-year journey with artistic director Orit Azaz, and we wanted, in the end, we decided that we were going to make a structure that was an artwork and a provocation in its own right, and a place where people could meet and create work. People who'd never met each other, cultures and groups who'd never met each other, would barter and perform together in this space. A bit like the fourth plinth that I think Artichoke had just done a few years before. So a democratic space where, you know, people could do things, and people would question, you know, how to mend the bridge, or how to mend divides within society and communities, you know. And at one point we had a huge table, which was, we had food, Langare provided food, and people came together and just talked about the divides and communities and resolutions and so on.
This was very shortly after the vote to leave the European Union as well. So, I mean, it was incredibly timely, wasn't it? That whole, that idea of a society being divided, or there being a bridge broken, and what can we do to mend it, to what bridges do we need to build in our own communities? It was a 52-48 society.
Yeah.
You know.
Then it's Ori, as an artistic director, you know, she's inspirational, and but she wanted, because of her background in circus and performance, she created a nighttime performance where the bridge, in the end, the final moment, the bridge is mended, and it's mended by a Leonardo da Vinci mathematical bridge structure, which is carried into the space by local people. I mean, here you can just see the amounts of people just engaging in different ways. You know, the piece is toward the last manifestation of it was in the Resi in Liverpool, which is in a very sort of deprived neighbourhood area, and again there was just huge engagement in this little park, but one of the most memorable moments of it was the audience arriving, and I think they'd had little experience of anything like this, so they stood up the front of it like a rock concert. And some of the performers were throwing things. They were throwing foam bricks at one point, and one landed in the audience, and a child picked it up and ran around the edge of the field with it. But what was wonderful was that lots of people from the audience did as well, and so did the performers. And so, you know, everyone was
that fourth wall really disappeared.
And it was like a different aesthetic, and I personally found that so enlivening and so exciting. You know?
So in the residency week, this is from Coventry, but as you say, that space became a place where different people could do different things. And the breakfast, you can see the big table where people ate. I remember Lou Lomas, a producer, saying to me that there was
Helga, you're frozen right now, but there were bridges, Leonardo da Vinci.
Because you just people. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying there were Leonardo da Vinci mathematical bridges being built all over the city. I think there were 37 community groups doing that and creating their own events as well as this going on. So, you know, it's a really far-reaching event that people could engage with in lots of different ways. So yeah, it was a hugely exciting project, and one that has led us on to some other work that I'll describe in a minute.
Yes, that's fine. Sorry about freezing everyone, but yes, absolutely, that there were moments that lots and lots of different ways for the city to come together, as you can see in the film. But to take you through the some highlights of work that you've done recently, and also some of those skills that you perhaps have needed at different times to make both bridge and other work like that happen. First of all, perhaps Milesians. That was
Milesians was our City of Culture major project, directed by Kath Leahy, who I've worked with for many years, and a really brave collaboration with Circa Columbia, and a large-scale piece created at Bishop Ullathorne's school, right in the heart of a community where there's little cultural engagement. And I think this is Imagineer, partly because of the work we did in the Resi in Liverpool and Barking and Dagenham, you know, seeing the value of not performing in the cathedral ruins or town centre spaces, but moving out and locating within communities and you know, really engaging people at a very grassroots level, but taking the highest level work that we possibly can. And this is a story of global migration. It's about the sea as the great connector of people. And it's about how people from different cultures can live side by side. And they can celebrate their cultural differences. And it's also, the projects that we create are also frameworks for engagement on lots of different levels, for training opportunities with young people. And so there was a strong community cast. There were emerging aerial artists working in it, working on the performance as well. And its kind of aesthetic, it took me back to the work that we were doing years ago with the European companies. It felt like, you know, it was a piece with a narrative. It was very theatre. You know, it's rather different from some of the work that we've been doing in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. But it was glorious, and it was wonderful to work with Circa Columbia and their artists, because the aerial work is extreme and beautiful, and to tell an important story, which was an Irish myth about communities coming together and not battling with each other.
Yeah. And in terms of your CEO and artistic director, but actually it seems to me that one of your skills is you have great powers of delegation. You know, you've just said this was Kath Leahy who developed this project. you've got trusted, and you know, I know that Claire Maddox, who worked on Bridge,
Yeah.
was who you met back at the Belgrade. So I know some of these are long-term relationships, and some of them are newer. I know your work with Ori is relative in terms of decades, relatively recent.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of those skills in terms of your people skills, what do you think? What do you think you've got that you can sort of pass on?
They attack me, Helga, all the time. You're talking about a strong bunch of women here. And if you add Helen Marriage from Artichoke in there, you've got, you know, and sometimes I feel quite daunted to them. They hugely challenge me. But I think my skill is in being able to facilitate and create the kind of atmosphere. And this is what I learned at the Belgrade, you know, that it's all about, you know, an artistic director leading something and you creating the conditions as best you can for them to achieve the best work that they can. And I don't always do it. And, you know, and they criticize me. And sometimes it's, Helen Marriage calls it a punishing field to work in. And sometimes there is a lot of joy for a bit, and then suddenly an end result, like a performance happens, and you know why you've done it. But I think I can stand back and I can support, and I think that's my great strength. I couldn't direct in the way they do, and also I can raise money. You know, I've got years of experience, and you know, these projects are costing lots and lots of money. You know, they're big budgets.
And also, I suppose I'd say again something I've observed, not just money, but you know, just like you got in touch with a barrister in London years back in Worcester Arts Workshop, you've had amazing contributions from, as you say, engineers, lawyers, all sorts of people along the way have seen something in what you want to create and said, yeah, we'll, you know, build a bridge, build a cyclopedia, you know, a chariot for a horse, a giant puppet, whatever there's been, you know, there's people along the way who've gone, yeah, I'm up for that. I want a bit of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's another project this year has been Turning Tide, an ocean fair.
Yeah, that was linked to Milesians, and it was on the same site in a huge tent. We do a project which is called Transformations, and it's for young people who are not in education, employment, or training, and we work with them to create authentic things. They learn by doing with us, by working within our frameworks of projects. And you know, Milesians was all about the sea. Turning the Tide was all about the environment and protecting the sea. And they created a lot of games and installations which engaged thousands of people during the time that we were in residence at Bishop Ullathorne. And I think it's really important that, you know, there were about probably 12 young people who had commissions to develop their own work. And, you know, and I think it's really important that young people get a real experience of doing something. The creative industries is really developing. We need more young people with skills, real skills, practical skills and knowledge of working in outdoor arts and site-specific spaces. And this is the way that we do it, is by creating an event that's theirs, they own, which we support, but that is curated by them.
Yeah. And I think I will come to it in a bit, but when I went to the Bamboo Summit, I actually said to you at the time, like there might be lots of people who like engineering, you know, engineering trade associations or the National Institute of Mechanical Engineers, whoever, who are all saying, yes, come and do engineering. And it all sounds very either technical or theoretical or difficult. Whereas what I love about, you know, it's sitting, it's cutting, it's making a bridge out of bits of clay, you know, pipe cleaners and paper and clay. Can you make things with your hands? You can. Great. You could, you know, have you thought about engineering? It's a completely different and very accessible way into professions and vocations that some people might not think is for them. And I think that because you approach it through creativity and play, I think that's an enormously valuable. Yeah, I just think it's enormously That's an enormously accessible way in.
I think what we've learned through working with all the engineers we worked with during Godiva and more recently Arab and Atelier One is that what they're looking for principally are practical, creative people, creative thinkers, because, you know, engineering isn't about mass production so much, it's about innovation. And so, you know, they're looking for young people, not necessarily having gone through university, but who have come up, who've got practical entrepreneurial skills. And I think that's what we, you know, that's what Imagineer can give. It's not, they're not going to college, but they're, you know, and I think we've got an 80% success rate of young people getting jobs, you know, coming out of our project. And that's really high, you know, I'm very proud of that.
No, amazing. So it really was a packed summer. I can't, it's just like, so those two were already pretty good, and you might have thought, City of Culture, marvelous. But Imagineer did not stop there, not by any stretch of the imagination. So the one I want to talk about next, I know was a long time coming. I in the dress rehearsal, I have a diary, a 5-year diary, and 4 years ago, last week, I, at the cathedral, attended a talk by Jane and Helen Marriage and a representative from the Burning Man Festival in Nevada, talking about the potential for collaboration. And that resulted in Sanctuary, a unique public artwork created to honour those people who lost, honouring those who were lost to COVID and the pandemic. So such a big dream, such an ambitious thing. Yeah, do you want to tell us about how and why it was important to you?
Well, always since, you know, Sultan's Elephant, Great Fire, different projects like Lumiere Durham, London Lumiere, you know, the projects where Helen Marriage has kind of taken over places and transformed them. And, you know, we work on a large scale, but nothing like the scale that Artichoke have worked on, you know, and they're brave, they're ambitious, and I think their work is truly extraordinary. And I've always admired Helen. We argue sometimes, but, you know, she had a vision. We wanted to do this in Nuneaton and Bedworth again, which is an area of low engagement. She came and visited the Bedworth miners site. There are a lot of cluster kind of colliery communities around there, but very little happens. And I think COVID's affected us all, you know, it's affected us all, and I think we just wanted to do something that would allow people to let go of it, and to let go of some of the losses that they had, you know, and I think it was brave, you know, always Helen pushed for it to be burnt. Claire and Helen and I visited Burning Man in 2018 in Nevada and seen some of the giant temples, and we began to work with David Best, who designs many of those temples, and we were lucky enough to get him to agree to come over. And again, it's one of those things about asking someone you really admire and getting them to come and work with you and making the conditions that he, you know, so he could work and he could do his best work. And so together we embarked on this journey. It was huge. It was at a difficult time. Everything was done online. But then the RSC put a hand out to us and said, look, we'll build it, and we'll build it for nothing in our workshops. And we'll bring in apprentices to work with us. And if they're great, we'll employ them in the future. And then we Imagineer, because we're close, we're on the doorstep of Nuneaton and Bedworth, we started to do a lot of the community development work, and it was really difficult. The last thing that Nuneaton and Bedworth had was Godiva visiting them in 2013 in Nuneaton Town Centre, and had an event of this scale, and people kept saying, why? You know, why are you bringing it? It was there were a lot of on the doorstep with people conversations. It wasn't about, you know, telling people about this through social media. It was about face-to-face talking about what we were doing. And then, you know, why are you creating this fabulous installation, and then why are you going to burn it? Why can't it stay in Nuneaton and Bedworth forever?
Wow,
it was a real journey, you know, and it wasn't until really the night that it burnt that people realized that it was important.
People got what it was about,
because it was about people letting go. And if, you know, if anyone that's listening was there that night, it was silent as the piece burnt, and it became a sort of burning, living artwork as it burnt, each section of it. It just, it was an extraordinary thing to be part of, and, you know, and to be sharing with that community who now are ready, you know, they want to do more because suddenly there's a confidence. And so Artichoke and Imagineer are coming together over the next 10 years to develop our version of Burning Man on the colliery site and around it, to make over 100 moving artworks, again, which are to do with the industrial heritage of Nuneaton and Bedworth and Coventry, particularly that area where the car industry is dying, but there's a lot of new innovative businesses starting up there. So we want to collaborate with them to make extraordinary artworks, but also to engage men in sheds, you know, people who are making. There's a lot of craft activity in the area. So we have big plans to build on Sanctuary. But again, you know, the reason why we managed to deliver so much this summer is because we collaborated. You know, Artichoke have such an infrastructure as a company. We couldn't have done Sanctuary alone. You know, we wanted to, and we achieved a really, really good partnership together, and one that, you know, is enabling us to talk now about what the future can be.
Yeah. Just so moving, as you say, just seeing it, seeing the images there, seeing what was written and what it meant to people. Just to say, I know that there's been a prompt in the chat, but yeah, if you've got questions, please feel free, use the Q&A or use the chat. We've got a couple more things to touch on in the blockbuster summer of 2022.
Can I just say, Helga, before though, that it's just something that really has struck me recently and more, and I said it to you earlier on today, is that the way that artwork became the people's is because of the things they added to it, the poems, the words, their own artworks. And so over 9 days, this lattice work framework transformed into a people's artwork. And, you know, of course, there were environmental concerns, which we were really, really careful about. You know, we talked them all through. I think we created our first environmental impact plan for an event. And I think we virtually did a carbon zero event because we were able to mitigate the carbon impact of the burn. But we had a couple of demonstrations. I mean, obviously people were, you know, they were rightly concerned, but at the end of the day, people could see the importance of the burn at this time, the catharsis, the release of pain for a community that have been so affected by COVID, like everyone else. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
No, I think that and I think that's because the other thing, and we'll sort of we'll come, it'll link to our next conversation. Like with the mystery plays, actually, like there's the importance of ritual, actually. The need for ritual. I think it's we think that we are sophisticated, highly digital, whatever people at our peril. I think we're still you know, there's something quite pagan about fire, but even if there's just something very elemental about that. And I think that is one thing that outdoor arts is very good at, getting in touch with that part of ourselves that needs marking and ritual. That, if you don't know, that's Helen Marriage there in the middle of that, in that picture there. Doubtless persuading people to do something.
Talking about environmental impact at that point, I think, Helga.
So another ritual or another marking point for and again, sort of, you've got this very alternative Burning Man, Nevada, you know, very alternative lifestyle steampunk type thing. We go to almost like the complete opposite, which was, you know, being invited to create work for the Platinum Jubilee pageant.
I know. It was
Walking down the mall, down the mall, you know, nothing on fire. and your response, which was, you know, Godiva Alive and the Queen's Favourites. And again, absolutely full of heart, innovation, and more Imagineering. Yeah, did you tell us a little bit about that, and you know what your instincts were in terms of what you wanted to do and make?
I think we wanted to have fun. I think our first conversation, I remember again with Kath, was that if we could make the Queen smile, it would be nice. And I don't think we're royalists at all, but somehow she felt important. Her life felt important to us. We thought that Godiva could have a new frock, and she could go and say hello to the Queen. But our big thing was our corgis, because we decided that we would make all the Queen's corgis, and we would make them as little puppets, little moving puppets, that would create mayhem on the Mall. And that's what we did. And it felt so strange to be doing Sanctuary and Milesians and the Imagine Bamboo Summit, and then the Queen's pageant at the same time. Yeah. It was just, it was a bizarre time, but I wouldn't change it for anything. And we took 200 people down to London with us from Coventry. We engaged many more in the kind of making of costumes and stuff that we took, and we just played our hearts out. We kind of returned to that kind of moment and joy of carnival that we developed all those years ago, you know. And so yeah, it was great. But people, the press got hold of the corgis in a big way.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
The 2 weeks leading up to it, we were on breakfast television, we were doing all sorts of things, but it was all about the corgis, you know.
Yeah, I think they should have had a role at the funeral, because they had the 2 real ones at Windsor, didn't they? They should have had a few Godiva corgis as well.
Yeah,
and they were so playful, and they did look so great. And from a distance, you did have to do a double take. I was there, and I do think I do think that was important. And in terms of that particular piece of work, what was the big challenge? Were there any particular challenges or things that you felt like you had to?
I think we felt we had to achieve a high level of spectacle. We were performing with, you know, 10 of the Britain's, you know, best leading outdoor companies, you know, like Kinetica and Emergency Exit Arts, and we just felt, you know, we got to make our mark. And you know, the budget, although it felt like a lot initially, it was a £200,000 budget, which probably sounds enormous to everybody, but when you're organising something on this scale, the level of engagement actually isn't a vast amount of money. So that was, I mean, I think that was a challenge. It was also challenging to do it at the same time as all the other work we were doing as well. And you know, but I don't, you know, it was a joyful project. You know, it was also, there were elements of real fun in doing it as well, and I think that's important in all the work, you know, that you actually have a laugh doing it.
And of course, on the day, like you say, you're one of 10 of the 8 representing the West Midlands. I think you were the only company from the West Midlands, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So you're representing the kind of the West Midlands. It was a bit of a, you know, it was like Outdoor Arts All Stars.
Yeah.
It's like some amazing things, but also, you know, you had some very strict protocol. You had to hit certain places at certain time. You know, you had to turn the corner. You had to be in the circular. So, you know, so it was I think people, however chaotic in inverted commas or whatever, however informal and fun things seem, like it's all just going to go with the flow, these things are highly regulated events, aren't they? You know, all of these things.
You know, Godiva, I mean, walks at a certain speed, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, carnivals and processions happen at different sort of time frames within themselves.
Yeah.
And there were times when we had to lift her up and drive, you know, drive on with her.
Like
Gave her a really curious kind of floating quality, almost ghostliness, which was quite magical. But she didn't actually walk for the whole, and I think that was challenging for us. Is, you know, to keep up and be part of a whole procession. When you've got, you know, a big piece of kit that you're trying to...
Yes, it's not like you've got people who are like marching in step all at one time. No. There was the cavalcade of cars it started with. One of the cars broke down. I think the one that had Pruley in it. And she was, so they were just sort of, everyone else had motored long ago. She was overtaken by all cyclists and everything. She's still sitting there in the car. They had to be sort of pushed off to one side. So yeah, these things, you know, and of course, there's not really any rehearsal time. There's not, you know.
Nothing. We did. We walked the course. We walked the route. That was it.
That was it. But you know, but certainly not all together and as a thing. It's not possible.
No.
And I think we've had the final one that I think we're just going to talk about briefly is the Bamboo Summit. I think we've got some images about that. The final part of the summer. There's the cyclopedia back, which is marvelous, and Godiva's horse. So the Imagine Bamboo Summit, Imagineer in partnership with ORIT, working with bamboo, and in fact that came out of the bridge project, didn't it? Those Da Vinci bridges were often made of bamboo, which started
the final solution to the bridge, the giant bridge, in the end was a bamboo bridge, a bamboo Leonardo da Vinci bridge, and that just, again, it changed everything. And I think one of the things I've learned is that our projects, one thing seems to influence the next, and it suggests a journey. So a really sort of lucky thing to find bamboo, and then of course ORIT, being the person she is, begins to discover bamboo as a material, and we just very quickly learn that bamboo potentially is one of the most sustainable construction materials of the future. And so, you know, from an environmental perspective, we felt in making people aware of bamboo that we could play our part, and we could also engage communities in working with bamboo. And often people had talked to us and said, you know, we're very anxious about the climate crisis. We don't know what to do. And then suddenly here was something you could do. You could grow your own bamboo. It acts as a carbon sink and sucks carbon out of the air. You know, you can make things out of it. It's simple to build little models and then to build big models. You know, it just lends itself to people engaging in it on a mass scale. And so we got very excited about that, and we also started talking to Andy Street, the mayor of the Combined Authority, and West Midlands Combined Universities, you know, Wayne Langford, about what we were doing. And suddenly we started to get an awful lot of interest environmentally, you know, because Andy Street's got his idea of his, you know, West Midlands forest, and we could plant. And then we engaged a sponsor called Brentwood Works, and they're very interested. They're a construction company. They're very interested in building with bamboo. So suddenly we're in a world where we've got all these people getting interested, and that's what the summit was all about. And you know, we've made relationships with Bamboo Bikes in Ghana, Rhizome Crafts in India, with Cave Urban in Australia, with Bamboo U in Indonesia, and all the way through COVID. And we were talking to these companies and learning their skills. And you know, today we did a sort of World Bamboo takeover. It was a week late because of the Queen's funeral, but I was listening this morning to specialists saying, actually, we can build in this country out of bamboo. There is a way to do it, and we can build a lot. We can grow bamboo to a thickness that we could only dream of. You know, and you know, bamboo, it's possible to change things. And that's not our expertise. It's been like a, you know, Orit will say this has been like a juggernaut. You know, we kind of put this thing out there. We've got all these UK partners building and making stuff with bamboo and doing bamboo events now. We've just done one in Redcar this weekend. You know, we've got another one in Stoke in March. We've just been asked to do all 6 boroughs in Liverpool over 3 weekends next August. This bamboo thing it's so exciting. But within that, Orit returns to her circus as ever, and is creating a bamboo circus using bamboo and testing that out with No Fit State Circus. So we will create a performance, but we'll also champion and support. You know, it's really interesting, all this kind of cross-sector collaboration and what it will bring, but we will keep bringing people together, you know, to make more people aware of what we could do with this material. And of course, in the end, it won't stop there, because there's other materials like hemp around and straw, and, you know, there's so much learning to be done. But we're in this thing now, and I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know whether Orit does fully, but we're on this journey, you know.
Yeah. And I think this in the image that we've got here of the circus artists all like hanging off this bamboo is what's fantastic about the way Imagineer can approach it is essentially through play. Again, we saw that's a very watching those circus the circus No Fit State Circus, just literally they're just playing with it. Hey, can this hold me? Can I do that? And again, we saw with the young people and their little structures. It's an incredibly accessible way into what then opens up a whole world. I went to the talk by the people who made the bamboo bikes, and there's sort of metal brackets and then appropriately sized bamboo lengths make up the frame. But apparently it then rides completely differently it's very responsive. This woman has been funded by the government to encourage women's enterprise by making the bikes. It's just like, it starts off as just this one little thing, as you say, this juggernaut opens up to sustainability, global entrepreneurship, women's rights, you name it. It just like, it really has blossomed. But well, you know, they say bamboo grows quickly. This has grown, isn't it? You know, it's amazing.
Thank you, Helga. You said it all so well. Thank you.
So, and again, all these, yet again, a theme of internationalism, involving people, sustainability, and that's fabulous, isn't it? And getting people almost like suckered into engineering, you know, like, don't tell anybody, but what you're doing is engineering.
Yeah, that's right. But I think there's also another thing that I just wanted to say, Helga, you know, is about sponsorship. You know, I think one of the things that we have learned is that the collaborations with industry and manufacturing they're not about money, really. They're about working together on an equal basis. And if you know, if you ask Arup about why they work with us, they'll say, well, you know, you think we're doing exciting things, but day to day we're doing some fairly bog standard things. Then Imagineer comes along, and our staff start doing some interesting, exciting things, and it's about staff development. So, you know, that becomes a kind of rationale for us to talk to an engineering company about working with us, you know, because those relationships aren't easy. That, you know, there's lots of barriers that would prevent us from working together, but that just openness to, let's develop your staff, and then Imagineer will get something out of it as well. So it's not about going cap in hand anymore. It's about a genuine equal partnership way of working. I just thought people might be interested in that.
I think that, well, in fact, I'm going to move to questions very shortly, but yeah, my sort of last question is really, what are your tips for people? We've got people starting out on their journey, some mid-career people, you know, what advice might you give? And I think the one that you've just started with about how engaging with businesses, you really don't get Sarah G, who's a fantastic fundraiser and marketer that I know, said, you know, the old fundraising adage, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. I always think that's really true. But I mean, you're engaging people about other things, aren't you? You're exchanging value. What else would you say, you know, either you'd wished you'd known, or those sort of important things to remember are?
I think go with your instincts, I think is really important, and that's what I've done over judging whether I do a project or not. Is somewhere inside I know it. I don't analyze it. I'm not an intellectual person. I go from my gut. Is this, you know, is this where we want to go? So that's good. And don't be afraid in your life to approach the people you really, really want to work with, you know, because that's what's changed everything for us, really. Is it? It's about picking up the phone, or it's about saying, I want to come and talk to you. You know, it's not send emails and wait for a response. It's kind of move. It's like going to the barrister in London and saying, look, you've got to help us because we're going to lose everything. And, you know, he could charge us hundreds of pounds a day, but he didn't. He did it for nothing. He helped us rebuild Worcester Arts Workshop, you know. So it's about, I think it's about thinking about who you can really work with. You know, I wanted to work with Helen, Claire wanted to work with Helen Marriage. We are working with Artichoke. You know, you can make things happen by talking to people. I think that's really important. I think always think left field is something that I've learned, is that lots of things go wrong, you know, things go wrong. You know, I'm facing all sorts of things at the moment, but I always think there's an answer. And sometimes those answers are left field. Sometimes they're about talking to other people and listening to what they've got to say before you make a decision. But there's always an answer wherever you are, and whatever shit you're in. Sorry, I shouldn't say that really.
No, I think,
and then connect. It's a difficult one. Work within a context always. You know, don't always look around you and at the people around you, and the cities and the towns and what makes them special, and work within their contexts. I think don't parachute in.
And I was just about to say, and as an add-on to that, because I think it is something you do, work within their real context, not the context you imagine they have. Take the time to find out what their context is. I think there's lots of people say, oh yeah, we work in context, but it's an entirely a context that they have imposed on a place, not the one they've heard.
Indeed. Listen, you know, listen to people, listen to what your, you know, colleague artists say, and listen to the communities, hear their voice, you know, and believe that someone who hasn't experienced the arts can influence what you do. You know, believe that your work can be transformed by working in a community in Bedworth or wherever, that can change what you do professionally. And you know, it's not, I mean, I know the Let's Create strategy and Arts Council recent strategy is not, you know, it's quite controversial, I think, for a lot of people. But I think it is about believing in people and believing in artists, and finding that togetherness somehow. And I think finally to say thank you to people, you know, always say thank you. That's important.
I just want to pick up when you're saying ask to work with people and then do. I think what has been clear from your story that you've shared with us so brilliantly today is expect those relationships to take time. I think some people ring up the phone and go, can you work with us? When? Oh, how does Christmas sound? It's like, no, of course, you know, like, I know that those Burning Man conversations took years. Not everything needs to take years. Some things go quite fast, but actually taking the time to build the relationships is what's going to it's not going to put pressure on the relationships, and therefore allow you to maybe go do, you know, like do things off scale, I think.
You're so right. And it's interesting with Arab, you know, we've been working with them probably for about 10 years. And then I got a phone call from them a couple of months ago and said, we want to give you £17,000 worth of equipment. And I nearly fell off my chair, because it's never been about money, the relationship with them. But then suddenly it is, you know, and I don't know what's best really, but I think that relationship has taken 10 years genuinely to get to that point.
Yeah, but that was never, but that's the point. That was never the point of it in the first place.
It wasn't. That's right.
That's just been a byproduct of other things.
Yeah.
I'm going to move to questions now. Thank you so much for, I've got some questions and comments, which I've got, they're just to the side of me. So if I'm looking away, that's because that's why. First, just a comment really from Sue Walpole. Thank you. I'm so inspired by the energy and community involvement within these projects. This way of working is really important, empowering and meaningful. That's from Sue.
That's lovely. Thank you, Sue.
And then from Dee. Dee is one of our emPOWer producers who did a fantastic neighbourhood festival in Handsworth. So hello, Dee. She's got loving listening to Jane at Imagineer, from Imagineer on the working methods of the marionettes, the production crew and engineers. Amazing. A little
thank you.
emoji. A longer question / comment from Annie Lochran. Annie, I think if you're the Annie I know, hello, I haven't seen you in ages. Artichoke's Temple project was the first crowdfunder project I got involved with. What's your experience with this type of mass funding model? And are you an advocate of crowdfunding, or has that bubble burst at times of financial challenge? There's another part, but I'll take that bit first. So have you has Godiva ever done, or did you ever do any crowdfunding?
We've deliberately never done it, because, and this is going to sound so awful, Helga, but I think just seeing what's happening, there are some very vital small amounts of money generally coming out of crowdfunding. I'm not sure, and I could be completely wrong, that the kinds of sums of money that we're looking for to do large scale work would come from that source. You know, I have to decide how I'm going to use my energy to get the best result that I possibly can. And so I would probably spend more time, and it sounds awful, talking to people who are influencers, who can lead me to bigger pots of money. And especially now, it's so challenging to raise money, you know, from charities and trusts that, you know, they've all changed their policies, you know, because of austerity, and you know, it's difficult. I've never done it. I know I've worked with a company called Highly Sprung. I think they've done it quite successfully in the past, but it's something I've never embarked upon. And perhaps other people will tell me I'm stupid, but you know,
I think, well, I've done a lot of fundraising of types in the past and worked with lots of companies, and crowdfunding suits a certain type of company with a certain, because it's very admin leveraged. You know, it's all very well saying 400 people are going to, even if it's 400 people are getting a tea towel, 400 people, that's 400 envelopes to stuff, and you know, it's not the no first thing. And as Annie says, at this time, going out to individuals who might already be challenged might not be the most appropriate thing. I'm just going to go to her second comment. I'm really interested in your work with young people, particularly those who are perhaps challenged in more formal learning settings, which we're talking about with you. As arts organisations, how can we better lobby government to make real changes in schools, to embed more core creative thinking, it's very close to your heart, entrepreneurial behaviours and nurturing imagination in a more strategic way, rather than the long-standing obsession with academic testing and league tables? So just a small one there, Jane.
You know, that's just such a question which is so close to my heart, and I hope that you're young enough to get hold of the baton, because we've been doing this. We've been funded by the Paul Hamlin Foundation, and before that, other charities to do precisely that. It's creative curriculum, and I can always struggle with that word, development. Placing the imagination and creativity at the heart of learning, and proving time and time again that that creates confident learners, you know, that using the arts, using embodied approaches to learning is vitally important. We've written report after report after report. We speak at conferences all the time. We've just been at a UCLan, a BERA conference in Denmark, I think, last month. No, week before last. And we speak all the time about it, but it is so difficult to make change here, you know, and we just keep banging on the door. And I don't know how to get in, Helga. You know,
no, I think in the current climate, I think it's I think arts. I think arts organisations already have enough to do by doing the art they do. But yeah, I do understand that there is an advocacy piece there, but there's a certain thing of people have got to be, I don't know, we keep banging on the door. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to take, to be perfectly honest.
And also because government and policy changes, you know, the Minister for Education changes. I mean, I kind of want to go and talk to a Minister of Education, you know.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
You
well,
know,
we've had at least, like in the last 2 years, we've had 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
But you know, all we can do is keep talking and finding platforms to tell people about TeachMake, which is our curriculum development project we're doing with Highly Sprung and Joe Trousdale and UCLan and other universities, is, you know, to keep on telling people about it. But I've been doing this for, you know, years and years, but what real change have I made? You know, it's a real tough area because government wants children to learn about the sciences and maths and English, you know. They don't creativity in the end, if that doesn't become a competency in education, it will affect our innovation and our industry, you know, and the government don't seem to make that connection.
Absolutely not.
We get it as artists, but you know, our voice is small, you know.
Yeah. Annie was just added a little comment, can we just kick the door down? But
yeah. Let's do it together.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to move on. We just get a couple more questions before we finish up. So Walpole, who made the earlier comment, said, I'd love to hear about opportunities to get involved with bamboo. Or burn the door, says Annie. Opportunities to get involved with bamboos, says Sue. What's the top tip there?
I think it's to come and talk to us, or come and meet us and talk to us, and we, you know, obviously want to know more about you and kind of the work you're doing, but you know, come and be part of it is what I would say. So let's meet and talk about how you can get involved. There are so many levels of involvement that people have in the project, and it's UK wide now. Well, it's worldwide, and we're linking in with the World Bamboo Congress. You know, so it's becoming, you know, it's becoming bigger every day, really. But you know, more people the better, really.
Yeah, and that's from having a few plants to, you know, I've just found I've just found a company called Naked Sprout, and so now my toilet rolls and my kitchen roll are made from unbleached bamboo, paper made from bamboo, UK grown bamboo that's unbleached. It's like the most, and it's very good. Sorry, it's very good toilet paper. I've been trying to find very eco-friendly toilet paper, and the last lot I got was dreadful. So bamboo to the rescue. This will probably be our last question, but from Carol Slight. Carol, hello, nice to see you. She's been a regular attender. This is great insight. I'm curious to know how you invite the communities you work with to participate in the creation of work and attend your collaboration. So I think something about the nature of the invitation will be really, yeah, it is really interesting.
It's really about going and meeting people and talking to them, even knocking on doors. Actually, Helga, it is that grassroots. You know, and it's knowing where groups meet. You know, knowing in each little community where's the heart ticking, and then going in and sitting down with people and listening to them and talking to them. You know, many coffee mornings that they have, or car boot sales, or different activities that they have, is being part of it and chatting to people, and you know, and finding out what would help them get involved. You know, if they want to get involved, telling them what we're doing, exciting them, and showing them images and pictures of things as well. That's really important.
I have to say, I did know something when you won the Artists Take the Lead project. I actually knew someone who's on the panel, and when you were chosen, they just went, well, Jane just talked about it so brilliantly, and once we saw that image, that was it. We were sold. You know, the power of an image really can't be underestimated.
I mean, if you take an image of the image of Sanctuary and talk to people with that, you know, you've got that, and it's beautiful. You've got a good start. I'm a great believer in a visual image.
And that actually, what you're just talking about is going to people where they are, not saying, imagine Lara having an evening in the, you know, it's like, they're not going to come. Why would they come to you? You know, look at I've just looked outside. It started to rain on a Monday night. Who's going to go to a church hall and listen to someone they've never heard of?
Exactly.
You know, however great your project is.
It's
like, as you say, it's just doing your time in the trenches. Got a couple more comments, in fact. So yeah, actually, this is a great question from Faye Claridge. Hi, Faye. I'm so impressed and inspired. Thank you. I think people will be shocked by your answer, because I know the answer to this question. Just wondering how many people are on your core team. The capacity seems amazing.
Well,
I feel like this is the time for the big reveal.
It's really interesting. It's 5 at the moment. That's tiny.
It's 5 people.
And we always decided that we were going to be slim, and that we could scale down if we needed to in order to build, you know. And we're project funded, so as soon as we get a project, we can employ 100 people, you know. But right now, for the next 3 months, we're going to stay small, because we've got some things we want to do, some strategic thinking, environmental planning, access and inclusivity planning. So we're staying small, but continuing to engage with our freelance team.
And I think that's also something that I wanted to point out in that checkered history, not checkered as in that amazing history of all those things. The majority of that time, you have not been a regularly funded organisation, have you?
No.
You were some years ago, and then just straight after Godiva, despite the fact it was your most successful project by a country mile, you were actually dropped from the then portfolio.
We got, I mean, you know, and I think it was right. We were made national portfolio clients as soon as we won the Godiva Awakes award, but we weren't ready as a company. We were just a group of people getting together, and we'd suddenly won this big award, and we came out of the Godiva Awakes project with a deficit of £40,000. So we were then considered to be high risk. So we got told we were coming out of the portfolio, but the next day we got a phone call saying, okay, so you're out of the portfolio, but we really want to make sure you're around, and we're going to support you. And that was Arts Council, and they really have supported us wholeheartedly for the last decade, you know. So
I suppose I was saying it also to encourage people who, you know, I know that there's lots of people, very hopeful people, have applied for this round. But that, or whether you feel that that's a million miles away for you as a practitioner or as a company, that isn't the only way to make work. I think that's really, obviously,
I think to be honest, Helga, you know, it's hard if you want to do large scale outdoor work. You know, imagine it doesn't do small scale stuff, and funding is getting harder. Going for strategic funds, I mean government funds directly, combined authority, LEP funds, and all of that is the answer. But we can only do that because we've got a history now of, you know, gaining funding in that way. We have applied for MPO this time. Of course, we don't know whether we'll get it. I think if we don't get it, we have challenges ahead, you know.
Yeah, no, very much so. Okay, this really is the last question, then I'm going to go to my thank yous, but thank you all for staying. And so Hayley Trust, do you offer volunteer or work experience with your company? And again, given the size of your company, that might be something to...
Yeah, we do. We tend to do that through the framework of our big projects. So as soon as we have a big project, as we begin to ramp up for Liverpool in 2023, then within the framework of the project, we do have opportunities for volunteering and work placements.
Brilliant.
We haven't got them now.
Yeah, keep in touch.
Yeah.
Subscribe to their newsletter. Follow them on social media. Keep an eye out because there will be those opportunities. And finally, just a quick message from Carol. Thank you so much for so much creativity, honesty, and generosity of learning, and for continuing to encourage and involve the current and next creators. Inspired, she says. But I think that she kind of says that for all of us. I'm going to, as I say, I'm going to pull things to a close, but just before I do, is there anything else you wanted to add, Jane?
No, I've really enjoyed talking. I've never done anything like this before, so you know, just I love talking to you, and you know, I'm here for a bit more. So if anybody wants to contact me directly, they're very welcome to.
That's brilliant, thank you. And we've had another little thanks from Deaf Explorer, D Manning. Lots of thanks coming in on the. So rather than read out the love on the, I'll just read out the love from here. So yeah, we are out of time. I just wanted to thank everybody. A massive thanks to Jane, our speaker from Imagineer, and so also to the hostesses with the mostesses on the chat, Lara, the co-producer of the emPOWer program with me, our producer Shirley Benson, our tech producer Gareth Peel, and Wendy, who has as ever done fantastic things on the closed captioning. Gareth goes away, and through the power of the pixies in his computer, will make this into a video, a captioned video, which we will share in due course on our website. So if there's anything you missed or wanted to get back, you can relive the last hour and a half. Thanks so much to everybody. Massive thanks to Jane, and this was the second and final emPOWer Masterclass. So big thanks finally to Caroline and all the team at OPUS who came up with the idea of emPOWer. And the reason there's got a big POW is producers of wow. So it's called emPOWer, producers of wow. And I think Caroline and Deandra and the rest of the team really have, they did recruit seven fantastic producers who really produced the wow this year. So a big thanks to them both. And from my Lara and myself and the rest of the team, just want to wish you all a very good evening, and hope to all see you again soon. Thanks so much. Good night.